All right. This podcast is around resilience. No matter what happens, Joshua, we're going to finish this podcast because we have resilience. I know we've done some recently working on overcoming obstacles and that kind of stuff there. And every time we do any kind of research, stress, anxiety, mental health, trials always come up around men's ministry. Probably even more so than addiction, which is odd, too. So this one's about building resilience, strength in adversity. And everybody out there should be able to identify with this because if you're either get ready to go into a storm, you're in the middle of a storm, or you just came out of a storm, one of those three. So we're going to take kind of a deep dive into the concept of being resilient, of what it is, why it matters, and how to cultivate that in our lives to overcome challenges and help with our overall spiritual well-being, mental health kind of thing. So researchers show that resilient people, individuals, are more likely to maintain their mental well-being during a stressful times in life. I don't think I needed the American Psychological Association of 2023 to tell me that, but
makes me sound smarter though.
Oh yeah, survey shows, resilience is the ability to bounce back from an adversity, and so many of you probably know our story of Katrina. My family and I went through Katrina. We were evacuees, born and raised in New Orleans, and so one thing that took place in that 2-year period. So it happened, let's see, August 28th-ish, 2005. By the time we went through, we went to, I'll give you the short story, Arizona, and then moved to Charlotte 18-ish months later. All in all, we moved here in June of 2007. So almost 2 years. 2 years is a long time to have what we call a normal routine in life upended because of some natural disaster, right?
Sure.
Or anything. Right?
We just had that hurricane that hit Florida really bad too.
Right. One of our church clients just emailed us about an hour ago that Tropical Storm Debbie had flooded their entire office. So multiple offices were damaged in that storm. And so, like I said, get ready to go through it, in the middle of it, or coming out of it. So what it did, though, for us, it galvanized us in our faith and in our family. And talking about punching our way back out of that Katrina, Jack, that was not going to take and shake us, even though we went through a ton of stuff. Times when who are we living with right now? Not where are we living. We needed the place to move in for a little bit to get our bearings and all that. Jobless, didn't have a place to live for a little bit. It was a humbling experience for sure. But being resilient definitely helped us get through that. Now, it helped you guys were younger.
Yeah.
You didn't quite know. It was like, camp.
Kind of vacation.
Like vacation. Like, oh, man, we're off the grid. Yeah, we're off the grid, all right. We're off the house grid. We're off the electricity grid, off the food grid. So 2 years of that is quite a length. But there are people who go through a lot longer, lifetime of trials and issues.
Sure.
So did a little bit of research on the science behind resilience. Isn't just an inherent trait. Like, you don't think, oh, that guy, that girl, they're tough. They go through stuff kind of thing. It's a skill that can be developed over time, keeping our eyes on Jesus. In the mindset, it matters. Adopting a mindset around maybe opportunity, growth, and a realistic view of something can build resilience, because There are going to be trials.
Yeah.
Jesus said that. So knowing they're going to be there, preparing for them is sometimes the best thing we can do.
Yeah, you and I both read that book, Grit, that I thought was a fantastic book.
Yeah.
It's very much on kind of resilience and what is the kind of like the psychology behind it. If there are, genetic markers or, nature versus nurture to kind of like talk about what makes this person last longer in, say, Navy SEAL training than the other person who had like all the marks that were like, oh man, it's great in school, they're great at this, and they fail when the guy over there, goes through with flying colors. I do think that a like battle ready mentality helps quite a bit.
Sure.
Always like understanding that something can happen, not with it being the idea of like, gloom and doom of like, oh man, things are great right now, it's bad's coming right around the corner, but
Right.
always being with the idea of like, hey, enjoying this for what it is, but being ready in case something happens is always is a good mindset to have. That way, when things do happen, it doesn't catch you completely off guard.
So we were driving back on the 4th of July thing.
Mm.
Remember at Noah's place. It's about 10:30 at night. I'm on the interstate. I hit something in the road, and all of a sudden I just hit the button on my steering wheel to see my tire pressure. And my back right tire, I think it was.
It was the front left.
Front left tire started deflating.
In real time.
In real time. It was super awesome to see. Thank you, Nissan.
Thank you, technology.
Yeah, right. And so we were about maybe 3 miles from home. Mom is freaking out. I'm trying to determine, okay, I can get us off this road, get us home. Like I said, it's about 10:30, maybe 10:45 at night on a Thursday night or Saturday, something like that. And I roll into our house. The thing said 2 pounds of pressure on my tire, but it was basically flat, basically. Yeah. Got us there safe and sound, because I knew that I didn't want to have all of us on the side of the road at interstate at that night.
Sure.
Trying to call, roadside assistance or changing a tire on the interstate kind of thing. Kind of kept my head about myself, That's what I do. Mom does what she does, right? She handles the like, oh my goodness, don't run that light, that kind of thing. So being resilient takes some practice, I am Gen X, so we probably experience resilient test training daily, trying not to die on summer vacation and
backseats of cars.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Seatbelts optional.
Seatbelts. What? My cousins and I, in the back seat of that station wagon, we were each other's airbags.
Hold each other down.
Exactly. So you can see that there's going to be times when we have to go through something, and Andy Mineo, goodness, I'm blanking on the statement now. Andy Mineo.
No idea what you're talking about.
If you stay ready, you won't have to get ready. It's one of his song lyrics.
It's been a while since I've listened to Andy.
So, but I think that if you go through life and you're like, everything's hunky-dory, or I'm not thinking more than like 30 seconds in front of my face. I'm like, kind of caught up in, what sales coupon do I have? Or is my car clean? Or, you're kind of thinking about some really surface level stuff. When some important things come along, you may not be ready to handle that. I think you should have those important conversations frequently so that you can kind of be aware there are things that are important and there are things that are just fluff.
Sure.
So our scripture reference here is, you want to build some resilience, you go to James, and he'll punch you in the mouth a little bit. James 1:12.
Blessed is the man who remains steadfast under trial, for when he has stood the test, he will receive the crown of life, which God has promised to those who love him.
So as we wrap up our first segment of this Resilient podcast. Be sure to check out our devotions, our Bible plans on our website. After September 1st, we have kind of pulled some of our most popular devotions and expanded them and turned them into what we call Devo Plus. And so be sure to check that out on our website at uncommon.org today, and stay tuned for some resilient sponsors of Uncommon. Uncommon would like to thank today's sponsor, Wilson Technology Group. At Wilson Technology Group, we're not just an IT vendor. We're your trusted business partner delivering exceptional support, innovative solutions, and peace of mind. One call, one team, all your tech issues resolved. All right, back to segment 2 of our Resilient podcast. This one is practical strategies for building resilience. Okay, so did you know studies have shown, I always love that intro. Studies have shown that mindfulness practices and physical exercise significantly enhance resilience. This is from the Journal of Occupational Health Psychology in 2022. There's way too many words in that sentence.
That needs to be abbreviated.
I see physical exercise definitely can help with, you feel like you can handle yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I was in martial arts for about 12, 13 years. I feel that I can handle myself if the need arises. If you don't ever do anything physically, you may not feel physically fit to do something. Mm-hmm. And so I think being resilient is a couple things: mentally, spiritually, physically, sometimes emotionally, kind of thing. And so I would recommend spending some time maybe outlining some ways that you can be. Building resilience requires intentional practices that strengthen your mental and emotional fortitude. Because you don't want to be like our flat tire story. You want to be on a side road crying. Mm-hmm. Your tire's flat.
Sure. And so many of those things are intertwined. You're mentally in a better place when you're physically in a better place, and
Sure.
You're spiritually in a better place when you're mentally in a better place. And a lot of gym, lose weight, that kind of stuff requires a lot of self-discipline, which
Sure.
helps in a lot of those other areas. With martial arts, what little I did growing up, I remember self-discipline was a huge part of that environment. Yeah. And so when you have that kind of level of self-discipline from being intentional about, hey, I'm going to go to the gym 4 or 5 times a week or whatever the case may be, and keeping with that helps and expands in other areas of your life, not just, oh, hey, I'm going to go to the gym and get physically fit. It's like I'm mentally keeping a promise to myself to do X, Y, and Z.
Right.
And there's so many physical benefits that help the mental benefits and help the spiritual benefits that, if any one of those is feeling like it's off, I would look at the others too, because usually there's a correspondence between the three.
Sure.
And you don't want to get to the point where you're like planning out your entire day of 8 to 9 I'm in my Bible, and 9 to 10 I'm going to going to get eat. 10 to 11.
Too much, yeah.
But being intentional about hey, I'm making sure I'm in my Bible for 30 minutes from this time to this time. I'm taking 15-minute breaks throughout the workday to make sure I'm okay, or whatever the case may be. Being intentional, I think, because it's easy to say, oh yeah, I could probably be better about being mentally in a better place or whatever. But if you don't take actionable steps and set aside time to do that, then that's just lip service.
Yeah, because I think that you can see, we probably both know the extremes. Someone takes on more than they can handle and overloads themselves, and they stress out about it.
Yep.
Then there's a person who, they don't take on anything. They're the laziest being you ever saw. You're like, how do you get through life being this way? And so something comes up, and you're like, I don't know how to handle this. So we're all on that different curve.
Sure.
But I do think that it's important for us to realize that there's a need there. Mm-hmm. And so definitely incorporating some time daily in the Word. If the Bible does not teach you that things happen that you need to be ready for, you need to go back from page 1 and read it again.
You didn't read the right book.
Right. So, developing coping mechanisms. Establish a healthy coping strategy such as prayer, Bible study, physical activity, and fellowship. Boy, those right there, that's a good lineup of one speaking, praying to God about a situation. Boy, that is paramount. Studying the Word, because there's probably something in the Bible that relates to something you're going through. From an emotional standpoint, you may not be trying to be killed like David, but you might feel there's a lot of pressure on you for a responsibility or role in life. And then building a support system. Surround yourself with people to encourage you and challenge you.
Yes.
And if you notice on the logo on Uncommon, it has 2 things. It used to have husbands, dads, and leaders. We pulled that down about a year ago. It says we encourage and we challenge. Because obviously we all need to encourage each other, but also we need a swift kick in the butt once in a while with a challenge. And that is everybody, including myself. And so finding people to help encourage you and lift you up as strong relationships are crucial in building resilience.
Yeah, this goes back to what we keep harping on about mentors and mentorees.
Yes.
You should always have someone who's pouring into your life, who is been through your stage of life, been through that quote-unquote storm, and then talking and building someone up that's behind you, about to go into that storm.
Yeah.
And that can be that doesn't have to be age, a level of storm. It could be, you're talking to a person who's a grandparent, your parent, and then a person who's pregnant, kind of thing. So that can take all forms and shapes with mentor systems. But I think that helps in so many different ways, of like not just like you talking to your mentor about maybe problems you're having, but being able to spend time helping others, I think puts you in a much better mental space.
Oh,
just
sure.
because you can be like, hey, you're not alone. And I make sure that I wasn't alone with it. I'll make sure you're not alone with this kind of thing.
Yeah.
So a support system is a hard thing to find, a good one, I think. But it's so easily overlooked by so many, the power of it. It's being intentional on both sides too, because it can't just be one-sided. You can't always just assume that person's going to check in with you. You need to reciprocate that. My wife is having some health problems right now, and we were asking for prayer in our Bible study group, and our Bible study leader, he reached out to me to ask kind of what we're praying for, kind of what the situation was, just kind of get an update. And that helped me feel not so alone in those moments. Sure. And that's when I think about that, and I'm looking at other couples in our group, and whenever something's going on, I'm always like, hey, how you doing?
Sure.
How's everything going over there? Checking in. Job thing. That's always my go-to. Is how's your job? Because I know from personal experience how stressful that can be, especially being on the inside of this and not just being an employee, but an eventual owner.
Right.
And how different that feels and the stress that is involved with that. So it's important to find where you can kind of talk to, or what you can talk to, which is funny because we just did that podcast about 10,000 words.
10,000 words.
But finding where you can kind of be that support system for someone else is just as important as you finding a support system for what you're going through.
100%. You should have a mentor mentoring you, and you should be a mentor to someone else. And so, it's funny, I have a mentor, and he's in his early 70s. Really kind of say he's a great guy is an understatement to the word great, but soft-spoken. I don't feel that, like when I'm speaking to him, there's never like, well, what you need to do is not be TJ. Let's just start there. Don't be TJ. He'll relate stories of his past experience, understands what I'm going through, like, empathizes with a story or asks questions or whatever kind of thing. And by the time we finished talking, I felt like I've just got my MBA, from, the counseling section of Harvard, So it's really, really good to have a mentor. And you find that the more you speak about things in tough situations, I think the better you are in handling them and they come up, because you're not like shocked. Oh my goodness, it's tax season again, right? Tax season comes every year. Well, it's a hurricane season.
Sure.
If you're a good Cajun, you know June to November, happy time is hurricane season, right? So you should be preparing yourself for things like maybe there's a short evacuation that's going to happen. How do you prepare for that storm? That's resilience, right? And so, and building a support system, like you said, surround yourself with people to encourage you, kind of thing, and lift you up. If you know you struggle with something, don't find someone else who's struggling the same thing. Misery loves company. You won't benefit each other. Find someone to maybe help offset that, has different strengths or some experience in that, and I think that's really going to be beneficial for both. And so our scripture reference for this section is Philippians 4:13. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Not trying to take that out of context, but that statement alone that says through Christ we can go through things because he strengthens us to do so. And so as we end this segment here of our podcast, we want to take and just visit our website. There's a ton of content around kind of this topic, right? Trials, stress. We're launching one right after it in first part of the last part of this year, rather, of going through the storm but having peace about it. It's called Stressed. And so be sure to check that out, because there are going to be trials. If we know that, then how are we preparing for those trials?
Sure.
And being resilient is a great way to do it. So stay tuned for some of our sponsors of Uncommon. Uncommon would like to thank today's sponsor, Studio 490 Digital Marketing. Elevate your business with Studio 490. Our expert team offers tailored web design, SEO, Google Ads, and social media management. Visit studio490.com because your success story starts today. All right, welcome back to our final segment of resilience. This is in Resilience in Action. So here goes our nerd statement for the day, or the segment. Research indicates that resilient people not only survive, but thrive under pressure, leading to a greater success in both personal and professional life. And that's a Harvard Business Review from 2022. You mentioned about Navy SEALs, and so I was reading a book, and it was talking about when they're testing Navy SEALs, it's like they putting you out there, trying to break you. The goal is not to accomplish the task of like holding this log in water or something like that. They want to see what happens when you're breaking, how you're going to handle that. And because holding a log is one thing, but dealing with the emotional trial, the physical demand, and the mental anguish with a situation is what they're measuring.
Sure.
And want to see how you handle that.
Because we all handle it differently. Whether you want to agree with how others say you handle it is another thing. I mean, I've seen guys who, when emotions run hot, their temper flies off the handle. I've seen other guys who things get emotional. They're like, no, I don't do emotions. I cut that cold turkey last year, so I'm not having this conversation. And if other people they take their ball and go home. They don't want to have a conversation like that. So making sure that how you respond in those scenarios is both, Christ-like and something that is glorifying to him is baseline. And then from there you can build the healthy coping mechanism that we talked about earlier.
So I'm going to give you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 names. I'm going to say a name, and you just give me like the first word that or comes to mind when you think of that person through the lens of resilience. Noah. Not your brother, but Noah in the Bible.
Oh, man. Yeah. Rock solid in that one.
Well, Noah, you're dealing with building that ark that for 120 years kind of thing.
That sounds tiring. Just I'm thinking 100. Oh my goodness.
I don't like cutting grass from March to November. I'm like, you think of some kind of death march. Oh, I gotta go cut the grass again. Moses.
Man, that dude has the. I don't know how you can deal with that much complaining and not lose your mind.
That was not so wandering in the wilderness, right? I don't know about you, but I would be like, why are we not there yet?
Didn't we just patch this bush?
Who's in charge of navigating this group, right? Joseph.
Man, forgiveness, goodness.
Resilient, right? Being persecuted by his brothers, being in prison, chased by Potiphar's wife. David. Saul spent a fair amount of his life trying to kill David. Not great days for David. And then Paul. Paul was tortured several times trying to kill him through the lifetime of his ministry. And this is just a couple. I didn't even mention Job. Hello, Job should be about the first one kind of thing. But I think that seeing those guys go through something, how they handled it, who they turned to, having God in their lives, having maybe a spiritual influence, right, really changed the direction, I don't know if Paul knew that taking the road to Damascus was going to be that life-changing for him, but that happened. Let's see. So I think one of the things that we went through with the hurricane piece was going to start working at a new place. Started in a position that they just made up for me, and it was not my strongest suit. All of a sudden, I'm in charge of web development for this company that I'm like, oh, okay, that's interesting.
I've heard of the web.
Yeah, right. So started working on that, kind of worked into some marketing for the company that they didn't have before. Got a chance to grow quite a bit there, which led to Studio, which then led to us taking over Uncommon. So you can kind of see that resilience leads to opportunities. And we can't always get there without being resilient and going through something. Joseph could not be second command in Egypt without going through that. Paul could not write a lot of the New Testament and spread the word without going through some of those trials. Moses leading people to the promised land. I mean, as you can see those examples, if those guys did not have resilience, they don't come out the other side of that and impact the world for God.
Well, I mean, look at David. I mean, a lot of the Psalms talk about him crying out to the Lord for help, right? I think it's a perfect example of, when David is going through, after the Bathsheba thing, and just crying out to the Lord of, repentance and asking for mercy and needing help. I mean, that is a perfect example of what we should do in those times of storm.
Sure. Yeah. I think embracing a couple of lessons we can learn here, embracing change. View change as an opportunity for growth rather than something to fear. We both, you're probably thinking of Mom, you say the word change. I usually don't have a response to that. I'm like, change. Okay, so you're thinking maybe Indian tonight, not Chinese? Mom only hears fear, change, must feel change. She does not like change at all. And so maintaining a balance, prioritizing God in our lives to sustain a resilience for the long term. I mean, if you only think that high school is difficult or college is difficult or having a job, owning a dog or two, or having a child or three like Noah and them, is difficult. There are much more things more difficult, and when you combine all those things together, it multiplies, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's important for us to prepare ourselves for challenges and obstacles and become resilient by keeping ourselves in the Word and focusing on Christ. You could see that when Peter stepped out that boat and started walking on water, I'm too much of a realist to think, so this is how it's going to be forever, right? I'm going to walk on water for the rest of my life. My brain would have been like, exactly when do I fall into this water, you know? So I think it's important for us to be very sober when it comes to trying to be resilient, because those things that force us to be resilient are usually very important. Very like I want to say uncaring of our current situation. Like
Sure.
there's a cancer diagnosis, or there's a you've been to go to your job, or whatever
Sure.
it is.
And one thing that with Heather's health taking a little bit of a downturn, and very reminiscent of what it was about a year or two ago, we've had very many conversations recently. Like, we've been here before.
Sure.
God got us through the first time. He's going to get us through the second time.
Right.
And so I do posit that it is good to look back on your life and see how often, God has been there for you.
Sure.
And when high school was the hardest thing, God was there. When college was the hardest thing,
Right.
God was there. And that He wouldn't get you this far if He wasn't going to take you to the finish line.
Sure. So our scripture reflection here, as we finish, kind of land this plane, is Romans 5:3-4.
More than that, we rejoice in our suffering, knowing that suffering produces endurance, and endurance produces character, and character produces hope.
Boom! It's like the Bible was written for us. Oh my goodness. Well, I hope that this speaks to someone who is in need of either go to a storm, in the middle of a storm, or coming out of a storm. And it builds your resilience. And if you want to leave a comment in the section below in our videos here, let us know if you're in need of prayer, if there's any resources that we could develop to help with that, or if you need any kind of help in general. So, Joshua, hit him with it.
If you're going to be something, be uncommon.
Amen.